All right, deep in the back corner of the shop are these heads I took off many eons ago. These came from the 5.3 that you just saw in part 1 and 2. These are 862 heads. Sorry, guys. See it? 862's. That's what the combustion chambers look like. A 200 and something thousand mile motor. They look fine. You could easily slap this back on a different motor or back on. They're in good shape. Stock valves and stock retainers you don't really want to use for high RPM or high lift stuff. You're going to replace those anyway. Factory valves are good, but for our purposes, they're going to be replaced. I put it on old rags to kind of help it out from being, direct on wood. They're aluminum, so, they're nice heads. I don't really know too much to tell you besides the plan is that these are going to go to Texas Speed. They're going to get ported with their 2.5 port job, which includes bigger valves. They do have the slightly larger combustion chambers because they're truck heads. Stock compression with those slightly dished pistons was like 9.5 to 1, I think. With a set of domed heads, your sky's the limit. You can. Hopefully that didn't just mar the surface. Oh, we're good. Should have been a little more careful. I had no idea that old nut, wherever the heck that came from, was sitting down there. Your rocker pedestal goes on top of there, and your rockers go on, bolting through here. The pedestal gets sandwiched between the rockers, and the bolts hold it down, is what I'm trying to tell you. So that chills onto there. They're really simple. The rockers are somewhere. Where the heck did I put the rockers? I don't remember. We'll probably reuse the rockers with the trunnion delete. They have trunnion bearings, which are prone to fail at high lift or under high load, high seat pressure. So when you upgrade the valves, the trunnions tend to break, and you don't want to piss a whole bunch of bearings, little teeny. They're like rod bearings. They're like that long, and they're really small. They would wreak havoc. It would be terrible. So you don't want to have those. You can replace them with a bushing. And it's like, I think it's a $60 kit. I did mine for my 6.0. It's a super easy process. We can do it on here when we do it. You just kind of get into a rhythm and you do it. It's actually kind of relaxing. I enjoyed doing it. Yep. So this is going to be pretty simple. The port flow numbers on these heads, I believe, were like 315 intake and like 218 or something exhaust. More than enough for a 5.3 to spin 65, 7,000 RPM with a mildish camshaft. You can go way more, but that's more than enough port flow to make good power. You don't need to buy a fancy aftermarket head. You can get your stock ones ported, and don't worry about compression ratio. That whole nonsense, I don't think people understand who are new to engines that you can increase or decrease compression with the dish of the piston or the dome of a piston. Don't worry about the ports. Same with the 317 head. I put +5 Weisco pistons into my 6.0, and compression static should be around 10.5 to 1, even with 317 heads, which have more combustion chamber volume than these do. Don't worry about it. You'll do fine. There's plenty of quench area in here. These are just fine heads. So that's what we're going to do. These are the exhaust ports. Hopefully you can sort of see. In the future, I'd like to have working on having a new shop. This is just kind of a barn that I do. These are your cathedral ports. They're tall and skinny. And hopefully you guys can see that okay. I hope it didn't just turn around. I'm doing the best I can. Hopefully the screen just didn't go upside down. So, yeah, not a big deal. These will get sent out to Texas Speed. I don't remember for you guys the exact turnaround time, and it's irrelevant because it was 2.5 years ago now. I think it was like 2 months, maybe a little bit less. It was relatively quickly to the point where I sent it out, forgot about it for a few weeks, and then they were already calling to get the payment because they already had the heads and they were about to work on it. If I remember correctly, that's how it went. Pretty sure you send it off to them, you tell them it's coming, they look the heads over, make sure that they're good cores. and then they call you and tell you how much it's going to cost, and then you tell them you want to have whatever springs you want to have for what lift cam. Might be a good time to say, hey, I'm going to get this cam, so it all goes in the same box, and you get your springs, your retainers, your valves, all done by them. It's all good. Comes you a head you can bolt right on. Yeah, it was an easy process. Easy peasy. This motor will if we do, I did a little bit more looking into it last night, and I'm kind of leading toward a pre-runner because it's something I don't have. My Cummins is already relatively capable off-road, and for how much time that I have physically in my life, I think it would be good to have a pre-runner because I don't have something that'll do something like that. My Excursion has really, really nice suspension, but it's just not going to compare to a pre-runner with 3 feet of travel. So I think that'll be really cool to do. So what I'm thinking is this will probably have a Holley high ram intake with like a 102 throttle body. It'll have, I was kind of thinking about Cletus McFarlane's Bald Eagle Cathedral Port boost cam for this. I think that's a 224, 228 for intake and exhaust, and I think it's 600 lift. So that's another thing to talk about too, is when you're matching your camshaft, you need to match it to your head flow. If your heads are only made to flow at 250 or 268, or I'm sorry, at 450 or 468 CF, or god dang it guys, thousandths of an inch of lift. You definitely don't want to have a camshaft that's going 600 lift or something, or lifting your valve 600 thousandths of an inch, because you will have a mismatched motor. In the same way, you don't want to have a head capable of flowing its numbers at 600 or 580 lift, 580 thousandths, 600 thousandths of lift. You definitely don't want to have a head doing that, and your camshaft only being a stock for, I think they're 457 thousandths of an inch lift for like a Chevy, like a LM7 cam. I think they're like 193 at 50 thousandths or something, and they were like 457 or something for lift. You don't want to put that cam in a head that's been ported to make power up at 600 lift. So you want to match your lift to your head's flow values, and I believe, like I said at the beginning of the video, is like 315 or 318 for these heads to be ported by them with their valves and all that at 600 lift. So if you do a 600 lift camshaft or a 588 lift camshaft, you're getting into the meat of where the head's designed to operate. So you'll be good to go there. So we're at 7 minutes and 50 seconds. I think that's long enough for this. You guys got some background, what I'm thinking about doing. Why don't you guys comment and tell me what you want to see. I kind of have in mind, I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do, and what I was thinking, expanding on what I just said. The Bald Eagle Cletus McFarlane camshaft. Obviously, we all know who Cleet is. He is the god and savior of motorsport. We love him. Thinking about using his cam in this, make it run well NA, set up a turbo, like a 76, 68 or something like that would probably do pretty well. Or 75 millimeter inducer. Something around there, or we could do twins. There's a packaging issue with a single. There's a space issue with twins. And there's always a cost issue with having 2 turbos, and then you have 2 up pipes, and you have 2 pipes that go into the intercooler. You have 2 pipes that need to go down the exhaust, or you send them out the fender, which I think is what we're going to do, is do fender dumps. That's why I was kind of thinking about doing twins, because you can have the one bank on the one side, one bank on the other, and an exhaust coming out one side and an exhaust coming out the other. Was thinking about that. You're not going to have the scavenging from having both sides. However, the turbo kind of mucks up the scavenging anyway, so I don't think you have too much to gain there. Though, when you have 2 individual sides, that's generally done in a much higher performance engine that has scavenging per individual cylinder. And what I mean by that is there's so much cam duration and so much overlap that the vacuum caused by the exhaust rushing out of one port has enough velocity of vacuum, if you want, enough draw to pull air through an adjacent port. Generally what's done is, because there isn't enough duration on a street motor, is that you're pulling from one side of the motor, the vacuum on its side is drawing a vacuum on the other side, if that makes any sense. But when you have a motor in a drag racing car that's a substantial, 3-4 horsepower per inch, a substantial amount of power is you have enough duration and enough overlap that you can have it to an adjacent cylinder. This one is, let's just say you had this one drawing an intake stroke, you had this one on an exhaust, the exhaust valve is opened, and you have exhaust flow coming out of here, and it has enough suck, and there's so much duration that they're open up at the same time to suck air out of the exhaust port, which draws in intake air and fuel into this port right here, or into this chamber. So I'm going to need to look into that. We could do a single turbo also, so we're not losing some scavenging, because that's a fair amount of horsepower. People put true duals on their truck, they end up losing power. Might not be much, but it also could be a good bit of mid-range drivability to help suck that scavenging effect of sucking through when you have an intake and exhaust valve open at the same time, where the exhaust has suck and the intake, it draws in fuel and air into the chamber and helps fill the chamber. So something to be thought about there. So yeah, this is the ordeal. I wish that the video quality was better. I'm sorry. This thing seems to be constantly out of focus. I'm doing my best here. If you guys want to see the channel grow into having fancy cameras and a studio and all that stuff, keep hitting the like buttons, keep hitting the subscribe button, and please comment and tell me what you'd like to see in the future so that I know. And make yourself a regular on the channel. We're going to try and grow the channel to have the content that you want to see and that we want to do. So thank you all for taking the time to watch, and please remember to like and subscribe. Take care, everyone. Have a great spring.